Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the radio button. So radio button is a content control that allows the user to select one of the given options. That being said, let's start with our first example. So here we are in Visual Studio 2019 and I have a grid with two columns so far. Okay, and let's go ahead and add a stack panel to our first column. Let's open and close the stack panel tags. And inside here, first I want to add a text block. This is going to read foreground color. Okay. And I'm going to set the font size to 24. Okay, let's zoom the designer in. All right, that's not bad. All right, so foreground color, and let's add a few radio buttons. So radio button. The first one, I'd like the content to be, say, in red. Let's add, copy and paste this a couple more times. Second one, I want it to say blue. And the third one, let's go with green. Okay. Let's zoom that in a little more. So the font size is a little, I feel like it's small, so I'm gonna create a style to set some of the properties in my style. So open close window resources window.resources tag, and inside here we're going to add a new style, and we want to target the radio button. Okay, so my first setter is going to be, I want to set the font size. So that's a property, and the property is font size, and the value we're going to go with 22. Let's try 22. All right, so right away, all our radio buttons, the font size increased. We got a little problem. Seems like our text and the circle is not aligned properly, so let's correct that too. So it's another setter. And this time we're going to target a different property, which is vertical content alignment, and the value we're looking for is center. Okay, so we took care of that. Next, let's give it a little margin too, actually. So I'm going to add another setter. And this time we're going to target the margin property, and let's get a value of 5. Okay, that's not bad. Great. So we got 3 radio buttons and a text block. Let's run this and see what we have so far. So we got 1, 2, 3 buttons. If you noticed, we can only select one of the options, whereas with checkbox, we can select multiple options. Okay, so that's probably one of the biggest difference between the radio button and a checkbox. Okay, that being said, let's continue. Let's say I want to add another section here, another set of actually radio buttons. Let's copy and paste this. But I want this to say background color in the text block, I mean. Background color. Okay, so let's run this again. So I want this first section to affect the foreground color, and I want the second color to affect the background color. But in this current setup, it seems like we can only select one of these 6 radio buttons. So we got a problem here. So there are 2 ways we can fix this problem. One way is to change the parent of the second set of radio buttons and place inside a child stack panel or another layout control for that matter. So now if I run this, now the 2 set of radio buttons will act independent from each other. So when they share the same parent, it's a whole big group of radio buttons where you can select only one of them. The other way to solve this, let me back this off, is to set the group name property on the radio buttons and group them separately. So the property we're looking for is the group name right there. And let's change the group name for this last 3 to group 2. Group 2. We increase the zoom on the XAML side so we can see it comfortably. All right, so I'm going to copy and paste this property to the rest of the 2 radio buttons. Let's try that. Select one of these and select one of these. So now, by changing the group name for that second set of radio buttons, I did accomplish the same thing without changing the parent. Okay, so by setting the group name property to a different value, we'll assign the radio button to the group name you just created. Okay. So let's actually go ahead and make this work. Let's go ahead and add a trigger to the style we created up here. Okay, so I'm going to just hit enter here and add a style.triggers tag, open close. So inside my triggers, let's see. So let's add a trigger tag, and the trigger we're looking for is property, and the property we're looking for is checked. So when it's checked, and the value should be true then. And what do we want to happen when this checked property is true? So we want to set the property called foreground to this time actually it's going to be binding. So binding relative source self, and the path is going to be content. I think that should be it. Let's try that out. No, that didn't work out. Wrong property. Let's try change this to foreground instead of focusable. Let's try again. All right, beautiful. So we got the foreground get going, Let's try the same thing for the background. Let's copy and paste the same setter here, actually same trigger. I think I don't have to, no, we don't have to copy the trigger, just the setter, because we just set in a different property. We can use the same trigger. So this time, instead of foreground, we want the background. Okay, let's try that. Beautiful. So now with one style, we were able to set the foreground and background within the same trigger. Okay. All right, so our first example is complete. Let's do one more example with code behind. Okay, so I'm going to go to the second column and add another stack panel. It's going to be grid.column1. Let's close this out. So our second stack panel is right here. All right, this is going to be C#, so let's add a loaded event. Create a new event handler, double click, and let's go to definition. Okay, so here we are in the code behind file. So let's add 3 text blocks. So I'm going to create a for loop, and we want to say I equals 0 as long as I is smaller than 3. We want to create a instance of RadioButton. Let's say var RDO equals new RadioButton. I think we forgot to give it a name to our stack panel. Let's give it a name. So name, let's call this STK for short for stack panel. All right, let's go back to our code behind, and let's say STK dot children dot add RDO radio. Okay, let's run this and see what happens. Oops, my bad. Should have been radio button. Getting a corner or something. Radio button up here. There you go. All right, let's try this out. Okay, we got 3 radio buttons here with no content whatsoever. So let's add some content to our radio. All right, so RDO.content equals, let's say, radio. Actually, it's going to be text, string. So open close double quotes, radio plus, let's add I to it. So it's going to be radio 1, radio 2, radio 3. Let's try it. Actually, no, radio 0. Let's change the 0 from 1. Oh, well. Let's keep it. So it's going to be radio 0, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 0, 0, 1, 2. Oops. Keep blabbering, I guess. All right. So radio 0, radio 1, radio 2. And our style, well, not the colors, but as far as the font size and alignment goes, it's still It's in effect. As you can see, the font size is the same as these. Okay, but the triggers won't work because that only affects the one that we created with XAML. Okay, but if you want, we can add a event handler to these radio buttons. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's say radio dot the event we are looking for is checked. So checked plus equals, let's create a new event handler. Oopsie, I should have pressed the tab key. Okay, so it created the event handler for us. So we want to change the foreground. So we're going to say var RDO equals sender as radio button to cast it. And then we want to set the RDO dot foreground to, let's say blue. It's a new solid color brush, and that's passing colors dot blue. Okay, let's run this and see if it works. And it did. Beautiful. So we did one with XAML and we did one with C#. So I think that's it for now. If you have any questions, please drop a comment. I'll get to it as soon as I can. Again, that's it for now. Until the next one, take it easy.